Hey podcast. So today I'm chatting with Claudio Caluori, who really does not need an introduction. So welcome on, Claudio. Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
So before I ride, I absolutely love to watch riding videos on YouTube. So I'll sit down with a coffee for 10, 15 minutes and watch videos. And I've seen various videos of yours to get me in the mood to ride. The most recent one is the Home of Trails with Danny McCaskill. So that looked like it was great fun to film.
Yeah, that was good fun, and I learned a lot riding with Danny too. Like as a racer or let's say normal mountain biker, you kind of learn to go around obstacles, and then if you ride right behind Danny, he never goes around obstacles. He just goes straight over them, and then he kind of realized, like, well, yes, why didn't I ever have this idea? Why am I actually going around the rock when he can just go straight over it? So it's a different riding style. It's pretty cool, actually.
I bet it was nice, really, wasn't it, riding with someone from a completely different background?
Yes, completely different. But nowadays he rides so much mountain bikes that like he's fast too on just a normal trail.
Yeah, for sure. So I'd love to start really. A lot of people know you now, they know about your racing and about obviously doing your course previews and your commentating, but what most of us probably don't know is about how it begun for you. So when did you first start mountain biking?
Oh, that was like 93 when my parents bought me a mountain bike to actually go for hockey training, because they had to drive me to ice hockey training every day. And at some point they said, hey, what about if we buy you a mountain bike and you just ride to your training so we don't have to drive you there every day? And I was like, yeah, let's get a mountain bike. Cool. But soon after that, mountain biking was so much more fun than actually going to hockey. That's where I gave up playing hockey and started racing. Actually, cross country. It wasn't even downhill. And so in the first couple of years, I did everything from cyclocross to track to road to cross country. And only 4 years later, I discovered that downhill is actually even more fun.
What did you like about downhill over the other disciplines?
Well, the real story is I was on a cross country training ride and I found that BMX track somewhere. I've never seen
Okay.
a BMX track before, and that was when I was, I think, 19. And so, like, I did a lap on it, and that was so much fun that I went a couple of weeks later. I went to buy a BMX, and my parents were like, "What are you doing? What are you doing with a kid's bike?" And so the upcoming winter, I pretty much spent all my time on that BMX track, which obviously led to the fact that I wasn't a fast climber anymore in the cross country races, but I was a really, really fast downhiller, which
Okay.
then made me try out downhill, and there we go.
And then you were probably one of the sort of like really when downhill racing just started to take off, weren't you? You were kind of in that initial surge, if you like.
Well, I was kind of right at that point where you couldn't do both anymore. So at the beginning, I thought, well, let's try both cross country and downhill. But that worked till like 95 or so. And then it was definitely over to where
Okay.
you had to specialize. And at that point, there were even people still racing on the same bike, like in 93 or so. There's people doing the downhill on the same bike on Saturday as they would the cross country on the
Nice.
Sunday. But then in 96, there was no way to do that anymore. And then the decision was done. At first, I was like hesitating. Should I try to do both, or should I try to stick with cross country? But as soon as you're in there, you don't think anymore. You just go for it.
So how have the tracks changed over time then? So since like 95, 96, how much gnarlier have the tracks got? Like how have they changed over that time?
Um, I would say they have become a bit more consistent now, where you don't have mile-long pedaling sections anymore.
Yeah.
Gnarly stuff was already there, already right
Okay.
from the start, but there it was more punctual. And in between the gnarly stuff, you'd have like a minute of just pedaling. Could happen, not always, not on every track, but like if you think of Nevegal back in the days, it was just as gnarly as it would be today. Maybe they would add a couple of bigger jumps nowadays where that wasn't necessarily in there. Yes, I would say it's probably more compact now, where the action is right from top to bottom without necessarily a break in between.
Yeah, for sure. But they were just as gnarly back then, were they? It was just the bikes weren't quite as capable.
I would say so. And, like if back then you had a rock garden, and that's kind of like the same topic as with Danny McCaskill. Back there, if you have a rock garden, you would find your way through and make sure you have a proper line through it. While nowadays, some of the riders, they would just like jump into it and see what happens and hope that the bike handles it. I mean, yeah, I'm exaggerating. Obviously, you still need to have a good line.
Yeah.
But you'd attack rock garden in a way different way nowadays than we would have done it in the 90s.
Yeah, got you. And I presume the speeds have got a lot faster, have they? And they must have done really with the more capable bikes.
Yes, that is definitely about the bikes. Although I do remember that one of the first downhill races in Switzerland I've done, they had such a wide open grass section, really steep, and I was actually on like a 5 centimeter travel bike. And we were going 100K down that.
Oh
They
my
had like
lord.
yeah, and that is ridiculously fast, and that never happens nowadays in a downhill race, So it's all relative, I would say.
Yeah. So you were just more mental in the 90s, really. Is
Exactly.
So how did you try and carry on? You okay?
Yeah, well, obviously it happened much more often back then that you just had something breaking on your bike while you were riding. I remember that at one race I suddenly could see my brake next to me flying through the air. And then I somehow had to try to slow down without it. And stuff like that happened a lot more than it does nowadays.
So as bikes have kind of progressed, things like that, your brakes very rarely, touch wood, fall off. Sort of every new invention that comes into mountain biking, there's always some kind of like fight back with it. So like e-bikes is a very like big topic at the moment, for example. I think they're getting more and more accepted. But one of the counter arguments to people who are against e-bikes is that, well, you could say the same with suspension, because you've gone from 50 mil travel to 200 mil travel, and now you've got better brakes and better tires, and this is almost just like an evolution of that. So what are your views on technology continuing to come into mountain biking and progressing? Do you think things like e-bikes are great things, or do you think that mountain bikes should just continue to improve, or or do you think it should kind of stay more natural? I've got a wasp on me, apologies.
Well, the e-bike topic is probably a separate one. The non-e-bikes will continue to develop, and they're not going to be replaced by e-bikes.
Yeah, I agree.
But e-bikes are pretty good fun. I've only ridden one twice, and I loved it. I see the benefit of it. Like, I live at the bottom of a mountain that goes all the way up to 3,000 at a glacier. And if I have to work here till it gets almost dark, and then you still want to get a quick ride in with an e-bike, you could pretty much pin it all the way up to the glacier and have a ridiculously long downhill after that. While with a normal bike, I'll just have to do a small loop down here.
Yeah, for sure.
So there is definitely a benefit, but one doesn't replace the other, and it's also not like you're kind of the lazy guy with the e-bike, because I found out it makes you go even harder, because on a climb, if you have that extra power from the e-motor, it just makes you want to go faster. So at the end,
Yeah,
you're
for
just
sure.
as exhausted as if you go on your normal bike, but you
Yeah.
might have had a lot more fun.
Yeah, for sure. And you've climbed a lot further, so it might be 1,000 feet and you goose and need a rest, but instead you can do that 3,000 feet on an e-bike and get all the way to the top.
Yeah, exactly.
And what about the sort of progression for mountain bikes with better suspension, better brakes, better tires, better wheels, better frames, better everything? Do you think that's a good thing and should just continue?
Well, the steps are probably not going to be as big anymore as they were
Yeah,
in the past. Um, I would not see any reason why we should stop that evolution. I mean, it has brought us to where we are, and I think we all agree that the bikes nowadays are a lot better than in the 90s. They're also a lot more fun. With normal stump jumper nowadays, I can ride faster downhill than in the 90s you would have
yeah,
ridden with the fastest downhill bike.
yeah,
And now this is a bike that I can also ride uphill with. Um, so just an all mountain bike, an all mountain bike is so capable nowadays. It's so much fun to ride downhill, but it's also good fun to ride uphill. While
yeah,
maybe 10 years ago, you'd have to choose whether you want to have a bike that is fun on the downhill or a bike that is fun on the uphill.
yeah,
And now with all that evolution, you can have one bike that is fun on both.
yeah. And that's only a good thing because, like you said, more fun.
Yeah.
So, moving back towards your racing, how did you transition from racing personally to then managing teams? Because you managed teams for a long time. I'll still do.
Yeah, well, like I had my highs. I was in the top 10 for a couple of years at the World Cup. But then for some reason, I just kept training more intensely, more precisely, putting more effort in, had a trainer and followed his training program by the minute, for like every single day in the whole year, and had a mental coach and had a nutritionist. Maxed it all out, but the results still went down. And had a family then, had kids, and at some point you could just not justify putting that much effort into the sport, um, letting your family wait for you. Like, the sport has always priority because you're a pro and you need to make sure that you do everything right.
Yeah.
But if you're riding around 40th place in the World Cup, then it's hard to justify all of that. Um, Not only for the family, but even for myself, it just somehow didn't make sense anymore.
For sure.
Um, and at that time, I had the opportunity to open up the team for Tomac in 2007. And then the first season was 2008. So I ran the Tomac team for that 1 year while I was still riding on it too. But then I had well, it was already a pretty good success, but the brand Tomac then went down again. So Scott was interested that we would run the team for them. And from then on, we kind of went big.
Nice. And then it went
Yeah.
from there. So, what were some of the challenges of managing a mountain bike team then? Obviously, you've done it for a lot of years.
Um, the challenges is really dealing with all different types of personalities, and being a former racer, sometimes maybe your own ego stands in your way. You never know.
Okay.
Um, um, when you see like, okay, well, I would have done it so much different in the past than these kids do it nowadays. And you're like, well, why don't you do it that way? And kids don't listen because they have their own way. And so you need to accept that, obviously, while still helping them as much as you can. But then every rider puts you in front of a new challenge because every rider is so different. And then you want to do as much as you can for them, and you want to help them succeed as much as possible. But then they still have to race on their own. It's still up to them whether they're going to go fast or not.
Yeah. I suppose it's a completely different role going from managing yourself and nailing your training, your nutrition, your mindset and all of that to getting the best out of other people. It's probably doing and managing are two very different skill sets, aren't they?
Yeah, funny enough, though, for the first couple of years, when my riders were on track, I was just as nervous as if I was on the start line myself. It meant so much to me.
I bet. Were you nervous? Were you nervous to see them get hurt? Because you kind of accept the dangers yourself, but it must have been hard seeing, the riders who are so close to you. The potential downsides and the risks if they do fall off. Were you ever worried about the safety?
Not really, except for when Brendan did the Rampage. That is when I was. Then that is where I was worried. Yes, but during a usual downhill race, being in that business for such a long time, it's just daily business.
Yeah, it's just the norm to go down a hill at 100 kilometers an hour. So, over your race managing career, what was one of your proudest moments of you or the team?
Well, when Florian Pujin won the World Cup in Leogang, that was definitely our highlight as a team.
Okay, love it. How did that feel?
Like winning it myself.
Okay, so it really is that good.
Yeah, that was really, really good.
I like it. So you mentioned Red Bull Rampage there, and I was going to ask you some questions, but we may as well go into that now. So the vast majority of people listening to this will have seen it on TV, will have seen the YouTube videos, but we know that videos always flatten things out. It never looks quite as gnarly, and it looks insanely difficult on the TV. So what's it like in person? And you've obviously ridden it yourself.
Yeah, well, the big challenge at Rampage is really if you're afraid of heights or not. If you're afraid of heights like I am, then Rampage is not for you. It's so brutal, even just standing up at the start. So the first year I was up there, I was struggling going up there. Even without a bike, just standing at the start was so scary for me. And I did not know if on the day where I was supposed to ride, if I'm actually going to be able to even just go up there.
Yeah.
So for the last couple of nights before I knew I had to go up, I hardly slept. Just like I was thinking, tomorrow I'm going to go up there and I'm not going to look left and right. I'm just going to ignore left and right. And when I'm up there, I'm just going to get on my bike and ride down. And I had to tell myself that for 50 hours. But I do see riders there who have that same problem.
Okay.
Maybe not as much as me, but then there's other riders who have absolutely no fear of height, and for them it's just like a walk in the park. It does not matter, and so they're completely focusing on their jumps and on their tricks. And yes, those jumps are huge, and the tricks that they are doing on those jumps are insane. But for me, that is not the scariest part at Rampage. It's really the exposure and the height.
Yeah, and it's so skinny, isn't it? Like I know when you start that first one, you've got that first drop, and it's just the tiniest landing and just sheer drop on either side.
Yes, and you just have to completely ignore what could happen if you miss that landing.
Yeah. How did you stay relaxed? Because obviously, when you said you were so scared, and you can hear the fear in your voice, like, and it's really your palms are sweating watching it. um, you can tell like it is genuinely terrifying you. But to ride it well, you need to relax. So you need to relax your arms and your legs and just ride well. How did you go from being absolutely terrified to being able to relax enough to actually ride it well? Like that's got to be tough.
Yeah, that's where I would say ignorance is a bliss. Yeah, it's like you have to just commit. At some point, it's where either you do it or you don't. There's no going halfway at Rampage. Like
Yeah,
once
yeah.
you put your foot up and you, you start riding, you should not be hesitating, because that's where it gets really dangerous.
Yeah. And you didn't seem to hesitate on the start, on the video especially. You didn't like do like 5 run-ups to it and then drop in. You seemed to just be like, right, get on my bike and go. Is that how it was? You just got up to it and then just started?
Yeah, pretty much. I didn't want to go up there twice.
Yeah.
um, but that is kind of the same way we always did the World Cup course previews. I had one go and that's it. So in that
Yeah.
one go, I had to get those jumps done, or I wouldn't do them. But there's no rerun or anything.
Yeah, for sure. I think most of us would struggle to ride all of those courses, the World Cup courses as well. But you do it chatting as well. Like, do you have to make an effort to talk on the way down, or does that just come naturally to you to talk and ride at the same time?
No, it's the way I've done it. It was quite a bit of work too. I mean, I did prepare, and I did walk the course before I rode it, and so I knew more or less what was coming.
Yeah.
And I also had my thoughts on what I could explain at a certain point.
Okay.
So it was kind of prepared, but when then you're on the bike, it comes differently anyway. So
Yeah.
I also had to react on what the guy in front of me does. Um, but yes, it wasn't just total unprepared freestyle. It was a bit of thinking about it too.
Yeah. So at least you've got an idea what you're going to say as you go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So at Rampage, watching everybody all over it, what separates kind of the best riders who win it or who do the best versus the others? I mean, you've got to be an amazing rider to just attempt it, but what separates the best from the rest without kind of putting down the rest in any way?
You mean at Rampage or at the World Cup?
Uh, Both.
Well, at the Rampage, I'm not a very a specialist, as much as
The
in
World
the
Cup.
World Cup, because at Rampage there's all the judging and the tricks,
Mm,
where at the World Cup it's just the time. But
yeah.
there I would clearly say, and it it's being proven at every single race, it's all in your head. I mean,
Okay.
all of those riders are amazing riders, but some of them are just a little more ready in their head than others, and they can perform when the pressure is on. And there is no, I mean, obviously the best guys also have a very, very good team in their back that set up their bikes exactly how it has to be for each track. And if you talk to those teams, it is quite insane what efforts they do to get those bikes dialed in every detail for each track.
Yeah.
But at the end, it's still the rider that needs to perform. And you could see at the World Cup final this year, um, how the riders were struggling a little bit, um, with all that pressure, and all of them did their mistakes that both Loic and Amaury didn't do all season long.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's really really crazy how some of the riders are extremely fast in practice and in qualifying, but then when final comes, they're not performing that well anymore. And
Okay.
some others are, like Amaury and Loic, when it counts, they just perform.
So for people like Amory and Loic, sorry, do they do anything differently to have that better mindset? Or is it just, do you think it's just in them? Like, do they do something in the 10 minutes before they start where they've got they've got their headphones on, or they're doing something different, or what?
Well, most of the riders would go into the zone and just visualize how they ride down. I don't know exactly how Loic and Amaury do it, because while they are up at the start, I'm in the commentary box. So I don't know their rituals. It's very, very individual. Some of the riders just need to chat around and be cool, and some of the riders need to go hide somewhere behind the trees and just be alone and focus. So I wouldn't know what Amaury and Loic do.
It's just more, it's a personal thing, rider to rider. Everybody just does a different thing depending on what's better for them.
Yeah, well, generally most of them are quiet and try to focus and somehow deal with that load of pressure.
Yeah, for sure. So to go on to a complete random curveball, you're a vegan, aren't you? Is that right?
Yes.
Bet you couldn't have guessed that next question. So talk to me more about that. How long have you been vegan for? Why you a vegan? Yeah.
Well, I've been vegetarian for 22 years.
Yeah.
And only vegan for the last 9 months.
Okay.
So I've tried to become vegan for a couple of years, but being Swiss and loving cheese so much, that was quite a struggle. So finally, at the beginning of this year, I managed to like being very consequent, like very, is consequent the right word there?
It's
Like
probably
when
not
you
the right
don't do
word, but
exceptions.
you mean strict, don't you? Yeah, I
Yeah,
understand what you
strict.
mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so for the last couple of weeks or maybe even month, I have gone, like most people would say, completely insane, where I'm really not only trying to be vegan, but also be more conscious about really just buying stuff that makes sense on a sustainability side. So I'm not going to buy an avocado that comes from Chile or
Okay.
from Peru or from anywhere else in the world but Europe. Generally, I'm trying to keep it down on avocados anyway, because they take so much water to grow. And if you actually think it all the way through, you have to go quite extreme, because there's a negative thing about almost everything we eat.
Yeah, for sure. It's got to stop somewhere, hasn't it?
It's got to stop somewhere, but I'm currently going quite extreme, to where for the last couple of weeks I've been pretty much eating just vegetable and nuts and beans,
Okay.
and salads. And the crazy thing is I feel so full of energy that
Okay.
I can almost not stick behind the computer. My body just wants to go out and run. So it's like the opposite of what most people would expect, where people would say, well, if you don't get your protein, you're gonna feel tired all the time and you're gonna blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay, why am I in such a good shape? Like, I went out running 2 days ago because I couldn't sit in front of the computer anymore. And I haven't eaten really that day, just being working on the computer, and there was no vegan options around anyway, so I just didn't eat anything. So normally 2 years ago I would not have been able to go out and do sports if if I hadn't eaten before properly. But 2 days ago I just went out. It felt like I had to go run. I had so much energy, and then I was running, and I was like running so fast. I'm like, what's going on here? Why am I in such a shape when actually I have no time for training at all, because I spend so much time just working on the computer? So how does this work? And then I only went for half an hour, but I was running quite fast. I came back to the house and noticed I'm not even breathing. It's like I just got out of my chair, and
Right.
and it's so crazy. And then I was sent a link yesterday about a movie called The Game Changers.
Okay. No.
It's a movie from James Cameron, the guy who did
Avatar.
Avatar and Terminator, and
Yeah.
it's a movie with Arnold Schwarzenegger in there, and it's all about plant-based food.
Okay.
Like,
Nice.
okay, now I'm curious. I haven't watched it yet, but I've only watched the trailer, and it's really all about how all these athletes can perform like really with plant-based food, and that's
Yeah.
just what I have been experienced in the last couple of weeks. It's just like going strict, pretty much going against anything that nutritionists would tell you.
Mm.
And I couldn't have done that experiment when I was a pro, because I thought, okay, well, I need to always eat. I need to eat enough. I need to eat a lot. I need to get my protein, blah,
Yeah.
blah, 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 blah. And now I can try it because I'm not an athlete anymore.
Yeah.
But it just made me, like, the way I feel at the moment makes me curious. How would it have been if I was eating that
Vegan while you're
way
racing.
while I was racing? Yeah.
For sure. So do you have to? It sounds like you don't. Are you making a real effort to get enough protein in now that you've gone vegan? Like, are you consciously eating beans and things like that, everyday legumes, or are you just eating what you want? What's your approach to it?
Well, it's been a process, like when you become a vegan and you don't really have time to be a proper vegan who takes care of his food all day long. Because I simply have to work. I cannot be taking care of, okay, what nuts do I need today, and
Okay.
what beans and blah blah blah. So I just ate whatever there was. But that in many cases means there is nothing. So
Yeah.
if you want to be strict, as I said, and you're traveling as much as I am, and you don't have the time to prepare your food for the next 5 days, that means you end up in a French restaurant where there's simply no option for you. Not even the salads arrive without meat in there. So then you have the choice of being strict or not being strict and just eat whatever there is. And I've now reached the point where I'm strict, and I just say, well, if there is nothing for me as a vegan, then I'll just eat nothing. And I won't be a burden for all the people around me trying to find me something to eat. I'll just say,
Okay.
don't worry, I just don't eat anything.
Pass me the water.
Yeah, get me a glass of water. And that takes quite a long time, or took me quite a long time to get to that point. And for the moment, it feels really good. Maybe I die tomorrow, and then
We'll quote this video.
Yeah.
No, that's interesting, because I had a few questions that were written down based around energy and getting enough protein, and especially how you found it racing. But actually, it sounds like it's the complete flip of what I was expecting, because I was expecting you to have to be really like strict with your diet to get enough energy. But actually, it's the opposite. It's just that you're eating this way and you're feeling much better because of it. So yeah, that's cool.
Yes, and as I said, it's a process. You could probably not go from being a full-on carnivore to do what I do now, and I wouldn't know if what I do now would work if I was still working out every day full on.
Yeah.
Although that movie, the Game Changer movie, I think is saying that. But I have no proof there. But all I know is that it feels super good, and it's again, like racing, it's a thing in your head. It's you deciding whether it's good for you or not,
Yeah.
and you know what's best for you anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So you touched on it then. How much time do you currently get to train and ride yourself then at the moment?
Currently, I'm on an average of one ride per week.
Okay.
Yeah,
Nah, that's good. Do you do anything else around that, or is it purely the one ride a week?
it's purely that one ride a week.
Okay. Nah, that's cool. That's good.
Unless I get to go to one of our constructions, and then that is pretty much like a 7-day, all day long workout too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I saw. I can't remember what interview I was reading, but that sounded tough. So it's a nice segue that to get into that. So tell us about Velosolutions, how it came about, how you started trail building, and then we can get into kind of the physical side of it because some of those builds look brutal.
Yeah, they are. Well, the trail building is kind of a natural thing for any downhiller, I would say. Um, for me, it really started in '99 when I was spending my winters in California training, and in San Diego we tried to build our own training track. That then later on became quite a popular track for all sorts of teams to train on. And from there on, I just kept building stuff, jumps, and in 2004, with two of my friends, we've then founded Velosolutions while I was still a racer. But soon after that, my friends said, well, if you keep on racing, we don't want to do this alone. So they found other jobs, and we kind of were inactive with Velosolutions. But then when I quit racing, I activated it. I wanted those two friends to come back and work on Velosolutions with me, but they had their pretty good jobs that they didn't want to quit anymore. So then it was just me for a couple of years. And in 2009, the whole pump track thing came up, and so before that, Velosolutions was just a trail building company,
Okay.
not being specialized on pump tracks.
Yeah.
But then we came up with the first concrete pump track in 2009, and then in 2012 with the first asphalt pump track, and that's really where things took off crazy. Like, we now had something that the cities could build or could buy, where they didn't have to have a whole maintenance crew to keep it in shape
Okay. So
afterwards.
with concrete, it's very hard to keep in shape, is it, for someone who knows nothing about materials or building?
No. The big difference was not from concrete to asphalt,
Yeah.
but from dirt to something paved.
Oh,
So
okay. Sorry.
before
Got you.
us,
The step before that.
the pump tracks were already there, but nobody paved them, whether that's concrete or asphalt, but they were
Okay.
all dirt. And so pump tracks were popular already, but they were not really something a city could be interested in, because it's a pile of dirt that's going to fall apart
Got
within
you.
2 weeks. So if a city builds one, they will have to employ someone to keep it in shape.
Yeah.
But with taking it to a paved solution, you have something that stays in place and that the city doesn't have to worry about once it's there.
Yeah.
So the concrete was one step. It was already sort of a success. But when we went for asphalt for the first time, we knew that we did not want to go back to anything else, because the advantages of asphalt are just so big, like the grip and the smoothness and the all-weather usability and the fun you have it. Like, once you rode on a asphalt pump track, you you knew that this was so much better than concrete. So yeah, and from there on, it just went worldwide, and it's still exploding. It's still growing, and yes, we're reinventing ourselves every day, trying to handle it all.
That's amazing. It's great to see it become so successful. I think I read somewhere, is there about 100, there's probably more now, but you've done about 170 pump tracks around the world. Is that right?
We're
Probably an
I
outdated number,
don't
that.
know if we're approaching or if we've already passed 200 now.
Okay, amazing. I like it.
Yeah.
So sometimes, I presume you don't build them all personally yourself now, do you? Is that right?
I still do,
Okay.
but obviously trying to keep the whole thing together
Yeah.
from the headquarter as well. So I can pretty much only go to special projects. So either that's Pump for Peace projects or somewhere where the client has a special reason why he builds this pump track,
Yeah.
and then asks if I can actually be on site. And I still love it too. I still want to be on as many constructions as possible. It's just not very reasonable to leave the whole office alone, because we have really, really good construction teams now. Some of them are better than if I'm there myself.
Okay.
So there's not a real reason for me to be on construction itself, other than that I just really want to.
Like it. Yeah. I read about one that sounded like it probably wasn't particularly enjoyable in the moment. Though, was it in New York when it was 40-degree heat? So you had the heat coming up from above and then the heat from below you from putting the asphalt down. That sounded brutal.
Yes, and that happens in many, many projects. And yes, there are moments on any pump track that are not that enjoyable, but you know that saying about the comfort zone, right?
Yeah.
It's not those moments that are always in the comfort zone are not the ones you remember afterwards. So if you want to get if you want to build a really good pump track, you cannot stay in your comfort zone.
I forget what it is. I think it's type 2 fun. So you've got type 1 fun, which is something that's just genuinely fun. So riding a mountain bike down a hill, like just chatting to your friends, doing something that's just fun. You just enjoy it. And then type 2 fun is fun that comes out of doing something that's like brutally hard. So me and my friend last Friday, we did a 24-hour mountain bike ride to raise money for Alzheimer's research. So we just rode round and round and round and round and round our local reservoir. We did about 136 miles, I think it was. And that wasn't fun in the moment when it was raining and windy, but it's type 2 fun. Like, it was enjoyable because you're really pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone. So you it sounds like you get a similar sort of feeling when building those pump tracks.
Yes, and like once you see how it's used by the kids when you're done building it, and then the kids come in, hundreds of them, and all of them love it, then you know that every bit of sweat you've sweated during the construction is totally worth it.
Yeah, suddenly all that pain goes away like that.
Yeah, exactly.
So how did that lead into Pump for Peace? So what is Pump for Peace and how did it come about?
Well, that's exactly that story with the kids coming in. And basically we had a project in Thailand where we went to build that one. And when we were there, it kind of felt weird because we built the pump track right in the middle of a bunch of shanties.
Okay.
So we had a whole lot of kids around there who were looking at us. They had like no shoes, no nothing, clothes with holes in it. And we were thinking like, okay, well, who are we building this pump track here for? Is it just for some rich dudes who can actually afford the bike, or will these kids here actually have a place to ride as well. Will they even have bikes or whatever? We had like mixed feelings building that track there, but like in the minute where we finished with the last bit of asphalt, all of those kids came out of their shanties with whatever they had, like some of the bikes had broken off pedals, just the axle was there, and the kids were riding bare feet on just the axle, and they kept riding for hours and days, and they wouldn't leave. I'm like, whoa, wow. So I asked the client, are you gonna let those kids ride here also in the future? And he said, yes. Well, that's the idea. And I'm like, all right, now we're talking. And this is where we knew, like anywhere we go in the world, it always has that exact same effect. It doesn't matter whether we're in Switzerland or in the UK or in America or somewhere in India or in Thailand or in Africa. It's always the same. The kids come out and love it, and they have fun together. And that's where we thought, well, we need to find a way how to do this more often. So then the first approach with Pump for Peace was just that, like once in a while when we can afford it, we should just go to a sketchy place and build a pump track.
Okay.
And then we did that. That was in Lesotho. Lesotho is that little country in South Africa.
Okay.
And we had a contact there who immediately said, yes, this would be so awesome here, and we could run it, which is also a factor, if we just go place a pump track somewhere without anybody taking care of it, then it might be completely useless. But we had a person that said he's set up to run the place and to give out bikes to the kids who want to ride. And so we did it there. And again, same experience. All those kids loved it. Most of the kids live in straw huts around the track, and they come out, and the pump track in Roma, in Lesotho, has become kind of the village center. So that's where people meet now, and that's where after school the kids meet and are together and ride. And then we thought, okay, well, we need to try to multiply this and make it a model that we can reproduce as many times as possible. And that's why we founded Pump for Peace as an organization.
Okay.
Where we would try to do all sorts of different actions to raise money to be able to build more of those tracks, whether that's sometimes funded by ourselves or funded by concerts that we play to raise money, or for example, when I quit the World Cup racing team, we then did a garage sale and sold all the parts that we had left over from the racing team, and all that money went straight into Pump for Peace.
Okay.
And whatever idea we might come up with to raise money, and once we have enough, we go and build the next track.
I love it. That's amazing. Do you have a goal with it? Like, do you have a certain number of pump tracks that you want to build, or is it just one more?
Yeah, we'll just go for as many as possible, and like we're open for the industry. If any brand in the industry wants to join us, and anybody is welcome. We're just gonna build as many tracks as possible.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I think especially the story behind it and seeing those kids' faces is brilliant. Where can people listening to this donate?
Well, pumpforpeace.com is where you get most of the information, or just contact us at Velosolutions. We now have one person fully dedicated at Velosolutions that's just in contact with all of those countries who are already waiting for their track. We have many contacts. We now just need to somehow figure out how to
them.
raise those funds.
Yeah.
And yeah, we're on it. That's why I said at the beginning, this is our biggest passion project at the moment. While we still love every single track that we build in anywhere in the world, but it's always something special if you go to a developing country. And yes, this is something undescribable.
Well, hopefully this podcast can bring that little bit more exposure to it, and hopefully some of the people listening to this, myself included, can get involved and help out.
Yeah, thank you.
So I think I've got some follower questions, which I put a thing on Instagram a few days ago saying that I was going to be interviewing you, and the questions came in. So I've got a few questions to ask you to finish off with, if that's all right, from my followers.
All right.
So first one, the completely random. What are your tattoos of?
My tattoos. It's actually just one. It goes from here.
Yeah.
all the way to here.
Okay, nice. Right
there
round.
it is. Well, around the back. So here on my arm, I have my son's name. On the other side, I have my daughter's name.
Okay.
And on my back, there was somebody else's name that I had to now cover.
If you want to replace it with my name, that's totally fine. I like it. Nice one. I'm just reading the questions. Next one. Okay, so this is he's a Swiss rider. So from Swiss rider to Swiss rider, how does he go about getting in the World Cup downhill? How about like the fitness and the mental side of it? So how does he go from being the rider that he is today to getting into World Cup downhill?
Well, ride as much as you can and commit. What I've done in the past is, like, I had the choice of getting a really good job and make shitloads of money, or just go ride and race without knowing if there's going to be a lot of money. And my choice was obvious. It wasn't even a choice. It was just clear. And if you feel that, then go for it and do whatever it takes.
I like it. Commit to it.
Yeah, commit.
Like it. I think I know the answer to this one, but have you got any plans to return to the course preview, or was your injury, which would be the lozenge crash, was that one crash too far?
No, it wasn't one crash too far. I actually wanted to get back straight away. But Red Bull was reasonable enough to not let me go back into it straight away. And also they won't let me do it again. It's just, for them, too big of a risk, even though I think I could still do it and I would still love to do it. But I totally understand that for them it's too much of a risk.
Yeah, hopefully in future they'll change their minds. What's the best pump track that your company has created to this day?
Well, out of those 200, that's a tough one. If I name one, all the other teams are going to be angry.
What's one that springs to mind? Then we can get you off the hook.
The one that's what?
One of your favourites, and then we can get you off the hook. It doesn't have to be the one favourite. There must be one or two that sprung up into your mind right now.
Well, Colorado in Broomfield.
Okay.
Is a really nice one. And Pretoria in South Africa came out pretty cool. The one in Thailand I mentioned before.
Yeah.
But there is some of them that I haven't even visited yet, because we're building 7 at the same time simultaneously.
Wow.
And I cannot be on each one. I just get the pictures of the current status, and I can give them some feedback. That's why there might be the best one, and I haven't even seen it yet.
Yet to be revealed, yet to be ridden by you.
Yeah.
Next question. Have you got any advice for this person who's racing their first downhill race next month?
Calm down.
Yeah, that's good. Like it. Calm down. Yeah, and that goes back to what we were saying before about Rampage, about relaxing and kind of going with the flow almost.
Yeah.
Good tip. I like it. How many bones have you broken?
Haven't counted. I do have a couple of screws in my heel still, but
Okay.
Yeah.
To just rack up. And then the final question, how do you stay motivated after a bad race?
Well, if you do it for the passion and for the love of the sport, the bad race is never going to slow you down.
Okay.
Because you do it because you love it, and that love for the sport, and that's not gonna change only because of a bad race.
Yeah, I like it. That's a great answer. You do it because you love it, not for the results.
Yeah.
Love it.
I mean, I understand that if you keep on having bad results, you're gonna reconsider. It's still not gonna break the love for your sport, but as I said at the beginning, at some point you will have to justify all the efforts you put in if you keep on getting slower and slower.
Yeah.
But the love for the riding stays there.
Yeah, I like it. So that leads me into my final question. I like everybody who I interview to finish with whatever message they want to put out there. So you can chat about whatever you want, put whatever message you want out to my followers. What would you like to end the podcast with?
Keep on rocking in the free world.
I like it. Well, thank you so much. Where can people follow you? Where's the best place for people to follow you and the company?
Instagram.
Okay, Instagram, great.
Yeah.
And what I'll do, I'll link up all the links for Velosolutions, for Pump for Peace, and for your stuff like that. All the links will be in the description of the podcast. But I've really enjoyed this, Claudio. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you.
And
I just
hopefully we'll
found
have one in
out I
future.
missed another meeting.
Oh, sorry. Well, I shall let you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.